That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, I'm going to be very excited to go through, talk about some Dynasty buy low candidates right here. And I'm telling you, there's one name on this list that if you do not walk away with at least sending a trade offer for, you're going to have to unsubscribe to the channel because I don't know what I can do to get through to you. I think there are some clear values here. Of course, before we get into anything, please go down there, drop a like on the video, leave a comment letting me know at least one player that you are going through and looking to trade for. Of course, it can be someone on this list. It can be someone off this list, but it would be awesome if we could get 100 people down there letting me know their opinions and players that they're trading for. That way you can just get a feel of what the community is going after. And also, if you want to join the Flock community, of course, you can do that over there on Patreon. On Patreon, you can get into a Dynasty League with us. You can get an in-depth podcast breaking down your Dynasty football team by yours truly. You have access to our Dynasty rankings. You get in our Dynasty group chat. There's so much going on over there on Patreon. You can find the link in the description of the video or in the comment section. I think that should be it. I'm very excited. I want to keep this intro brief. Let's go to a player that I thought I had on pretty much every roster I could get him on, and now I'm thinking let's go overpay for him on the 2 or 3 rosters I don't have him with already. Trey Lance. Now with Trey Lance, let me get out ahead of it. Yes, I was wrong this past season. We are looking historically, and if you were looking at the last 10 quarterbacks that were drafted in the top 3 overall picks of the NFL draft, 9 out of 10 of them were starting by the time you got to week 4. And all 10 of them were starting by the time you got to week 8. So I came through in this last offseason. I said there is a 99.999% chance that Trey Lance is the starting quarterback here by the time we get to week 8, and I was expecting him to be the starting quarterback by the time we got to week 4. Clearly, that did not happen, and also, I will be the first person to admit, the one game that we had Trey Lance start, he didn't look like a generational level quarterback. He didn't come out here and look like he is going to take the NFL over by storm. But I want us to take a step back. I want us to remember the thought process and why you are drafting Trey Lance. And it is centered around the idea that we are not collectively, and I know everybody wants to think that they are, the Dynasty Fantasy Football community, everybody watching this video, we are not NFL general managers. We are not NFL head coaches. It is not our job to come out here and evaluate the best talent. That's why I thought it was laughable when people were taking Justin Fields over Trey Lance. That's why I thought you could have an argument to take Trey Lance over Trevor Lawrence. And if you go over there to Patreon right now and you look at our Dynasty rankings, I do not feel bad at all to have Trey Lance ranked ahead of both of those quarterbacks, despite us seeing one game that he started this year. And in that one game that he started, he looked like he was a bad real-life NFL quarterback against a good Arizona Cardinals defense. Now, I want to go through and talk about this a little bit more in depth and admit, yes, he did not look great. He had 29 pass attempts, he had 192 passing yards, and 0 passing touchdowns. Now, of course, you did not have George Kittle in this game. Yes, it was at the beginning of the season whenever Brandon Ayuk wasn't really getting used. Brandon Ayuk in the doghouse. So yes, Trey Lance didn't have his weapons, but I don't want to make that excuse for Trey Lance. I don't want to say, oh, if you would have had him, he would have been great. No, we can't say that for sure. But what we can do is we can look at the fantasy production in a bad game started by Trey Lance. And this fantasy production was just fine, even without 200 passing yards, even without a passing touchdown. And you may ask yourself, well, Mason, how is that possible? It's because we play fantasy football. We chase fake points, and when you come away with 16 carries and 89 rushing yards, that's going to be impactful. That is going to be massive. And the previous week to this, and when he came through and he played a half of football whenever Jimmy Garoppolo did leave with that injury, you saw that rushing upside yet again. Now, yes, you also got 157 passing yards in half of football, 2 passing touchdowns, but more importantly, this is what I want to focus in on. You had 41 rushing yards in the half of football as well. So to go through and look at collectively, essentially through 6 quarters, you had Trey Lance coming out with 130 rushing yards. And I think this can be predictive going forward because we knew it was going to happen when he came in to his NFL career. You saw that was the style of quarterback Trey Lance was in college. So you go through and you say, okay, well, if we can average, say, 60 rushing yards a game from Trey Lance, what are some of his comparables in the NFL right now? What are some of his comparables from a fantasy football standpoint? And the perfect guy I want to go to, because if you say Lamar Jackson, of course, everybody loses their minds. Although I will say, I mean, right now, Trey Lance would have averaged more rushing yards per game than Lamar Jackson this season. I know we drew that comparison earlier in the year, and I know people lost their mind whenever we said that. So let's give it a little bit more of a palatable taste. Let's go over and instead let's look at Jalen Hurts. And yes, Trey Lance, he would have averaged more rushing yards this season than Jalen Hurts at the same time. And Jalen Hurts was not a good NFL quarterback at all. But going back to why we like Jalen Hurts when you were getting him at the beginning of the third round in 2020 Dynasty Superflex rookie drafts, the reason that we are targeting Jalen Hurts is because the rushing upside. Because although Jalen Hurts, I mean, if we go through and we look right now at the time of this recording this on December 21st, right before the Washington game, recording this so early because I'm going to be in Mexico whenever this video premieres. But nonetheless, I mean, if you're looking at the past 2 months here, 198 passing yards, 115, 236, 103, 162, 178, 147, 129. Over the past, I mean, essentially 10 weeks here, 8, 9, 10 weeks, Jalen Hurts has had one game with over 200 passing yards. Yet because of that rushing production, Jalen Hurts is a mid quarterback one in fantasy right now. And if we are going to get Trey Lance with that same rushing production, you're telling me right now that he has a floor of Jalen Hurts. And the reason that I'm willing to go out on a limb and say that is because the situation that he will be stepping into. He will be stepping into a situation with George Kittle. I would make the argument that George Kittle is the most impactful offensive player in the game of football. Outside of the quarterback position, I mean, I would prefer George Kittle from a run blocking standpoint and what he can do yards after the catch wise. When he is healthy, I think he makes the largest impact on the game. You see this whenever George Kittle gets ruled out and the line shifts on a 49ers game by 3 points. You're not seeing that with any other player that's not a quarterback. I mean, George Kittle is monstrous. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk are, I mean, more than average in their own right. And then also a great offensive line, and also Kyle Shanahan. And I know the last time we were talking about Kyle Shanahan, people wanted to go to the comment section and say, oh, Mason, you idiot. Kyle Shanahan's overrated. Kyle Shanahan's a bad NFL. Are you freaking kidding me? Matt Nagy is an NFL coach. Urban Meyer was an NFL coach. You're going to tell me that Kyle Shanahan is a bad... Okay, genius. Name me 10 coaches that are better than Kyle Shanahan. No, Kyle Shanahan is a good offensive-minded head coach. This will be a great situation that Trey Lance is stepping into, a much better situation than Jalen Hurts did. I want to believe, based on the investment that this team made into Trey Lance, that he will at least be an average NFL talent. And if he is an average NFL talent, and you combine that with the situation, and you combine that with the rushing upside, that makes him an elite fantasy talent. Trey Lance, in my opinion right now, should at the minimum be a second-round startup pick. Right now, whenever anybody sends me their draft over there on Patreon, I'm looking at it going, what the hell? In a Superflex league, you got Trey Lance in the 6th round? You got Trey Lance in the 5th round? Are you playing with children? Now, if you're going into a startup draft, don't go take him in the 2nd, because I can guarantee you'll get him in the 3rd, but take him in the 3rd every single time. Not only should you take him into the 3rd, but if you are already in your Dynasty league, I would go out of my way and I would trade the rookie pick 101 for Trey Lance. I would trade the rookie pick 105 and 205 for Trey Lance. I would go and drastically overpay for him right now, because I think that this is a quarterback that has the floor of a quarterback one over the next 3 years, because that's what his team investment has just as his job security. Go make the play. Please do. And of course, we're talking about Superflex prices here. One quarterback is going to be a little bit different. Let's go over to our next player, and this is going to be someone that we actually drafted a lot, surprisingly, Kadarius Toney. And the reason we were drafting Kadarius Toney a lot, I guess, is because we were just continuously getting him in the late 2nd whenever he was a first-round NFL draft pick. So, I mean, it's very similar to why we were taking Terry McLaurin back in 2019 at the beginning of the 4th round in Dynasty rookie drafts whenever he was a 3rd-round NFL pick. But nonetheless, I mean, looking at Kadarius Toney, I didn't even really love him as a prospect or anything. Just the Dynasty fantasy football community hated him so damn much. And with Toney, I know if you look at his rookie season, I mean, it's very hard to draw anything from it because, I mean, he just dealt with a multitude of injuries. And that's one thing that I think you may have to be concerned about with Kadarius Toney going forward, because a lot of these injuries, they seem like they're a little bit tied together. They look like soft tissue injuries, which I think you can be concerned with. But beyond that, Kadarius Toney showed a ton of upside. I mean, in week 4 against the New Orleans Saints, he came out and he actually had 9 targets, 6 receptions, and 78 receiving yards. Then this is the week that we're looking at. He followed that up with a 13 target performance, 189 receiving yards, and 10 receptions at the same time. As a rookie, that is incredible. Then the following week against the Rams, I know it looks like he has that massive fall off. I mean, he only has 3 targets, 3 receptions, and 36 receiving yards. What if I told you he played 6 snaps in that game before leaving with an injury? He played 6 snaps. And then he dealt with that injury over the next few weeks, got healthy at the bye. Then he comes back, sees 12 targets in this offense. Then he gets injured yet again. So with Kadarius Toney, I know the name, I mean, clearly has a ton of stink around it. But with Toney, the thing is, he looked like he was going to be a boom or bust wide receiver. This is a clear athlete, not necessarily a extremely polished wide receiver. And the question was, can Kadarius Toney get implemented into this offense and have success based on his athletic ability? And if that's going to happen, then can he continue to develop into a wide receiver? Well, we already saw the upside on if that's able to happen. And Kadarius Toney, he had a game with 189 receiving yards as a rookie here. I think that he's a clear buy low candidate. Now, of course, this Washington offense looks horrendous. Hopefully, Daniel Jones is good to go next year. If not, this should be a team that, I mean, I believe they have some extra draft capital, knowing that they went through and they traded back whenever they got sniped on Devonta Smith to go back and get Kadarius Toney. Hopefully, they can go through and address this offense and be a little bit better next year. But I think Toney clearly demonstrated that he has upside. He's extremely young at the same time. He still has that raw stink around him just because, I mean, a lot of people didn't think he was going to be anything coming into his rookie season. He proved them wrong. Now, he didn't get to do that over a long stretch because he did go out there and sustain a multitude of injuries his rookie year, but I think that he should be able to bounce back. And now our next player is going to be over at the tight end position. This is someone that right now, if you're getting into 2022 best ball drafts, it's laughable how low he's going. Irv Smith Jr. Now, if you know anything about Irv Smith Jr., let me give you some backup. I know that we probably haven't talked about him in a while. This was a tight end in that 2019 class alongside Noah Fant and TJ Hawkinson. He was the clear tight end 3 in this draft class. Goes in the second round as the tight end 3 over to the Minnesota Vikings. And this was supposed to be his breakout year. Then, of course, I mean, he does have the season-ending injury right before the year starts. But something that's very interesting with Irv Smith Jr. is the age. Irv Smith Jr. is 23 years old right now. This is a tight end that, I mean, you weren't necessarily expecting production when you drafted him in your 2019 rookie draft until later on in his NFL career. We know that tight ends, they take so damn long to develop. I mean, they have to learn how to be a receiver. They have to learn how to be a blocker at the same time. And Irv Smith Jr. is younger than Najee Harris, and he's going to be going into year 4 of his NFL career this next year. He should be 100% healthy at the same time. One thing that you really like to see is that he had this injury at the very beginning of the season. He had this injury before the season even started. He should be fully recovered, fully good to go to training camp. I mean, it's the complete opposite end of the spectrum with someone like Chris Godwin. Someone like Chris Godwin, even though we may love the talent, I'm going to be a little bit concerned about in Dynasty, just viewing him as a wide receiver that whenever you tear your ACL at the end of the year, that's going to linger into preseason. That's going to linger into possibly the start of the year at the same time. You don't have to worry about that with Irv Smith Jr. I mean, he was an impressive second-year player at Minnesota, an impressive rookie as well, to be honest, and he's still only 23 years old. He's younger than Najee Harris. I think he is a clear buy low candidate at the time being. And let's talk about someone that's going to be a little bit more expensive for you to go and trade for. But I think that, I mean, the price tag may be with it. And the reason I'm hesitant to bring him up is because he's going to play a week while we're in Mexico, and I'm not going to be able to speak on it. A.J. Brown. So, like I said, we're recording this before that Tennessee Titans game this next week. A.J. Brown is coming off the IR And A.J. Brown was a wide receiver that we got a lot of questions about coming into the season. Mason, should we be worried about the knee injury for A.J. Brown? Mason, should we be... And I was saying, oh yeah, no, you're not worrying about the injury at all with A.J. Brown. This should be a wide receiver that just continues to roll through and dominates this season, given the fact that, I mean, if you look at what he did as a rookie, if you look at what he did as a second-year player, he was one of the most efficient wide receivers in the entire NFL. And earlier this season, in the limited action that we had from A.J. Brown, he was commanding 30% of the Tennessee Titans target share. He had taken that elite jump up to be that alpha wide receiver one. And as we were discussing with an injured, Kadarius Toney, in that light, I am a little bit worried about the Kadarius Toney injuries because they all string along. You got a groin injury, you got a hamstring injury. They're soft tissue injuries that kind of are connected. With A.J. Brown, however, I don't necessarily know if I'm worried about these injuries. And I know a lot of people are probably going to think that's crazy, but I mean, if you go through and you look at what we have seen so far, I mean, he had the hamstring strain at the beginning of the year. Then he had a knee injury that was unrelated a few weeks later. And then he had a chest injury. 3 completely different areas of the body. Like with Alshon Jeffrey, with Deshaun Jackson, those are the wide receivers. Whenever you see hamstring strain, hamstring strain, hamstring strain, groin strain, hamstring strain, that's when you're like, okay, crap, this is a player that you know you're going to continuously have to deal with injuries with. I don't necessarily get that feeling from A.J. Brown. I think A.J. Brown should be able to come back in and continue to dominate. And it's not like A.J. Brown, here's a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2. This is a wide receiver that's in year 3 of his NFL career at 24 years old, a cornerstone asset for you that has multiple seasons under his belt of elite efficiency. And now that he has essentially all the targets to himself in Tennessee, he has wide receiver 1 overall upside. Like, I'm a little hesitant to record this now because it's going to look really funny when y'all are watching this and A.J. Brown's coming off a week where he was the wide receiver 1 overall for fantasy. And then people are going, oh, Mason, you idiot. How are we supposed to buy low on A.J. Brown? Hopefully A.J. Brown comes in, has a slight game where he has just say 11 targets, 6 receptions, 45 receiving yards. And then you can still go through and you try to send some low ball offers for him. And let's get to our next receiver on this list. And this is going to be someone that has been definitely disappointing this season. I know we're just continuously talking about these injured guys. But let's go over and let's talk about Michael Gallup here. And now with Michael Gallup, I thought that the Dallas Cowboys would have been in an intriguing spot coming into this offseason of saying, do we want to save $18 million and cut Amari Cooper? Or do we want to go through and let Michael Gallup walk in free agency? Because I think for them to go through and to have the level of investment that they do into Ezekiel Elliott, Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper, and then obviously spending the first round draft pick on CeeDee Lamb, I think it's going to be very hard for Dallas to bring Michael Gallup back in. But based on the injury that you had to Michael Gallup at the beginning of the season, I think it would be very hard for the Dallas Cowboys organization to convince, everybody that's a fan of this team that it's the right idea to possibly go through and save the $18 million by moving on from Amari Cooper, who has a massive contract, but not much money guaranteed. Amari probably not going to be there in 2 seasons, but for now, I think Amari is probably going to be the guy that they look to go to, and that should allow Michael Gallup to be a free agent this upcoming offseason. And with Michael Gallup, this is a wide receiver that we've seen so far in his NFL career have the ability to be a field-stretching wide receiver on the outside. That's what we saw back in 2020. We saw him also be a wide receiver in 2019, the second season in his NFL career, be a dominant player on the inside, and you actually saw him in that season. And I know y'all are tired of hearing me say this by now, but it's one of the craziest stats ever. That year, his second season, he averaged more targets per game and more receiving yards per game than Amari Cooper. And y'all know I love Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is one of my favorite wide receivers of all time. We used to have an Amari Cooper Raiders jersey up behind us in the old studio, but here with Gallup, I think that this is clearly a wide receiver with a ton of talent. Since returning from this injury, 5, 10, 8, 9, 9, 5 targets. He's out targeting Amari Cooper, I'm pretty sure. Let me go through and double check on that. I'm just saying that off the top of my head because Amari Cooper has been very disappointing. Yeah, he has been out targeting Amari in that same time period. Amari's looking at 5, 4, 2, 7, and 5 targets. So yeah, I think Michael Gallup's a wide receiver that you're probably going to see him go and at least get hyped closer to free agency. Like if you want to go through and buy Michael Gallup right now, and then by the time we get to NFL free agency and people go, oh crap, Michael Gallup's on the market. Maybe Michael Gallup's going to be going over to someone I mean, like the Chicago Bears to be the wide receiver one there, because I could tell you that Michael Gallup would step into Chicago and he would look at Darnell Mooney and he would go, hey, I am the captain now, big fella. I mean, you are a child compared to me. Michael Gallup is that talent of a wide receiver. He could go over to Green Bay, and of course, he'd be the second fiddle behind Davante Adams there. But I think there are a lot of intriguing landing spots for Michael Gallup with the talent that he is. And now I think that's all we got for y'all in this video. Really hope y'all enjoyed it. Please go down there, drop that like, leave a comment, letting me know who you are going out there and trying to trade for. Subscribe to the channel only if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. And of course, you can go check out all our stuff over there on Patreon. And yeah, that's all I got for you. Really hope you enjoyed the video and really hope you have a great day.